Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode and another stop for me to give you my thesis on. And today we're going to go over Adobe. This is really going to be a company that I think most people have different thoughts on. So, what has their recent performance been looking like? This year, Adobe's down about 17%, 18%. They've come up a little bit more recently, but I did think that this is probably a good time to take a look at the company just because I want to revisit my own thesis on it. And this is a company that I would consider buying if the price is good enough for me. So, what is Adobe? Right? The core business of Adobe, they have really two areas, which is going to be that digital media and that digital experience. They do have they are subscription based, and this is part of the issue that Adobe's experiencing right now, but it's also why Adobe is such an attractive company. So going into the digital media, this makes up about three-fourths of their revenue. This is talking about like Creative Cloud. This is what everyone thinks of when they think of Adobe. You think of that Photoshop, you think of the Premiere Pro. That's the image and graphic design, the video and motion graphics, that UI UX thing. And then you also have Acrobat for PDFs. That's what people know Adobe for, and that's also just true because that's where most of their money comes from. And next up, we do want to talk about the digital experience. I'm not going to get into too much details here. Actually, I probably should a little bit more, but they have analytics for improving marketing campaigns. They have content management to help you basically analyze what your content is looking like, whether or not it's something that you want. This is how you want your marketing campaign to go like, and they help with your advertising. They have all this information about what you're doing. They can help you make advertisements look better. They have information about what other people are doing. So they can really help you with your advertising, bring that vision into reality, essentially, for anyone who wants to be working with them. So that's the core business, and this is probably the more interesting part, I think, for Adobe. This is really going to be the tailwinds and the headwinds section. And tailwinds for Adobe, as you see here, I did put AI in the tailwind section. I don't think AI is a headwind for Adobe. I'll get into that once we get to the next slide. They have almost a monopoly on digital content boom at this point because anything that you're creating that is digital content, you're probably using something from Adobe. Something like Premiere Pro if you're doing animations, if you're editing, uh, Photoshop is definitely one of the things that are going to be there. And the last one is more of a tailwind than a headwind, but I don't, it, as of this moment, it's not as big of a tailwind as one would want it to be. It's that sticky subscriptions that Adobe has been infamously known for. So first up, let's talk about AI. I do think AI is a medium tailwind to Adobe and not a headwind. I know there's a lot of talk made about how, hey, Photoshop's going to die because people are not going to use it and they're just going to use generative AI to essentially create these images, and that fusion is going to take away the jobs of people who use Photoshop, and AI is going to be better at all of these things. But I don't think it is it. I think Adobe can incorporate AI into their suites, make their suite a lot better. People are looking for authenticity. People are not looking for that fully AI generated images. I've recently seen essentially an AI art for a Skechers advertisement, and I just have a deep repulsion to it. I think most people view it the same way. Most people do not like the idea of AI art. Most people are fine with art that is made by a human that is using AI as a tool to adjust the art, but people do not like the idea of full AI art. So that's why I think AI enhancements to their tools like Photoshop animations are going to be a real boon for Adobe instead of a headwind. So they are integrating AI into their core products, such as like Firefly for Photoshop and other areas for Premiere Pro. So it's going to be improving the reason it's a tailwind is because it's improving the product they give out. It also broadens the appeal to people who maybe never would wanted to use Adobe Photoshop or have very low experience with Photoshop. AI in this regard is really just a balancing tool. It makes it so that people who with less experience are able to do more with the skills they currently have because AI knows how to do a lot of it and support them that way until they learn how to do the more advanced items that maybe AI isn't able to do. Or as they use AI more and more, they're able to see, okay, this is what the tools are able to do and utilize AI in a more practical way. And that is going to be something that we can see. It is also a more commercially safe option for AI because they have this backlog of stock images to train off of. Technically speaking, if people want something that's full AI, which most people don't these days, but if you did, it's more commercially safe because you're not actually just scraping images off of the internet to get you these AI generations, essentially. Next up, digital content boom. So the digital content boom, everyone needs content at this point. There's no, there's really nothing that you can do that's only physical. You need something that's on Instagram, or maybe a YouTube channel, like what I'm doing, right? You need just different items in there. The rise of individual creators and influencers increases the market for Adobe and just that individualized people who want those products. Digital businesses. Gen Studio is also something for to tie the supply chain together for bigger businesses for to be able to use AI, the digital services and then the digital marketing area of Adobe together. This overall, I think, has about the same impact to Adobe as AI really does. Sticky subscriptions. This is really something that is both the bane and the boon for Adobe. People hate this high switching cost of subscriptions, but it does cause high switching costs to get out of Adobe's cloud. It gives Adobe recurring revenue, and it almost forces upselling people. If they only want Photoshop, if you're forcing them to buy a subscription, then they're forced to have the entire Adobe cloud. And it also makes it so that because people are staying within this e ecosystem, it makes it easier to sell them on the other items that Adobe actually provides. So overall impact, I think it's a medium to high tailwind, but on the flip side, as I'm going to talk to about it in headwinds, this is also becoming somewhat of a little bit of a headwind for Adobe. So there are three headwinds that I want to really make a point of for Adobe. You have competition, you have the perception of the subscription, and market saturation. So competition, there's a lot of competitors coming up for Adobe's throne partially because of that subscription issue. Challenges like Canva, which is free with a freemium model. Figma, as we've all known about the recent IPO. Serif is essentially photo editing suite, not photo editing, video editing suite. And there are other AI startups that are coming up that are challenging for Adobe's throne. I think for Adobe, because people are looking for alternatives already, this competition is not going to be great for them. It is not a competition which is going to be easy for them to completely win out. But I do think that in the grand scheme of things, they should be able to weather this headwind as well. But this might eat into their profit margins a bit more than people would like to think would like. The perception of the subscription. This is the big thing. People don't like this subscription. It is very sticky, which is great for the company, but it is terrible for the users, right? The pricing power has to be loosened because there's so many competitors now. They cannot get away with such high pricing power or such high of a subscription cost and just such high of a cost to get out of the subscription. People currently absolutely despise the model. So I do think that the perception of the subscription is not great. I think it is a pretty decent impact. If Adobe can change around that perception of their subscriptions, I think it would do wonders for the company as a whole and make people more willing to actually use a product instead of being scared away from it, thinking, oh, Adobe's just going to take me and trap me and just wring as much money out of me as they can. And finally, market saturation. Right now, people don't like Adobe as a company, right? So that makes it hard to gain new users, which forces Adobe to actually have to find a different way to grow revenue and profit, which is other than just wringing their current users out for money. And this is somewhat of an issue, right? It means that you need to find new users that want to join you. But if you are not giving them a competitive edge against things like Figma or Canva, why would they choose Adobe? And that's part of the question here. It's similar to the question raised by why PayPal, but Adobe has been in such a place now that it is much easier to rationalize why you would want to use Adobe's Creative Cloud instead of something like PayPal. Anyway, uh, rant aside, I think that this is somewhat of a headwind for Adobe. And let's just get to my thesis for where I think Adobe is probably going to be. Being a dominant company with headwinds to consider. You do have to consider that there are risks involved in Adobe, which was why it's been trading down recently despite the bull market of this year. If you're in Adobe, you're underperforming the market by 40% this year, which is terrible. I don't think AI is going to be the speller of doom for Adobe, as a lot of people said when AI came about. I do think that is more of a boon for Adobe than anything else. However, competition is going to be the key that you need to keep an eye on if you do want to invest in this company. If competition does take away market or not cap, but market takes away part of the market for Adobe, then Adobe's not going to be able to be as dominant of a company. It is definitely a company I want to keep my eye on. It is a company I am looking to buy in if the valuation is good enough for me. So what then do I think would be good enough valuation for me? So right now, I think I am still looking for a great time to buy. I do think that from the revenue standpoint and the free cash flow standpoint, an overall price of about $600 is not unreasonable for an intrinsic price. I am, however, thinking that I would love, because the intrinsic price for me is about $600. I would love to be able to get it at about $300. And right now at 367 or about $370, I think it is under consideration. If there is something that makes me think that Adobe's correcting their subscription services and turning that around and making it so that Figma and Canva and competition is not as big of a factor, then I would be able to essentially, in my estimates, raise what I think their ending profit margin would be and raise how fast I think they would be able to increase their revenue, thereby easily pushing this from what is currently a hold up to a buy. And I am hoping for that news. And this is a company I could see myself owning in the future. All right. Thank you guys for listening to me. This is another relatively short video. Unlike Speak Global, when I don't know how I talked about that for over 20 minutes. But thank you guys for listening, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Let me know what other companies you guys would like me to take analysis in, and if you agree or disagree with my takes on the company. Thank you guys so much, and have a great rest of your day.